And I'd like to ask you about Brookside and Crestwood and Plaza. And I always thought the Plaza came first.
No, actually, our first little set of shops were two stores, a grocery store and a sort of electrical hardware shop that was at 51st and Oak. But the real first shops, that opened in 1907, and that was as much to provide the real pioneers with a place to get their groceries. But the first set of shops that were designed to be what we would call a shopping center was Brookside. And I had a set of plans drawn up in 1915 for Brookside. But also happening in 1915 was the war over across the Atlantic, and we didn't get it built until 1919. So that's when the first building of Brookside opened. The next set of buildings, however, was Crestwood, which opened in 1921 between Oak and Brookside on the south side of 55th Street there. That was a different style, and I had brought in Mr. Delk as an architect. He had gone to school in Philadelphia, and after the war encouraged him to move to Kansas City with the idea that there would be a little bit of work for him here. And in the process of all of this, we talked about the style of shops. And I chose the style of Brookside because it was very much like a set of shops that I had seen in Roland Park outside of Baltimore, on the edge of Baltimore. And that's where I got a lot of my ideas, was really from Roland Park. But I didn't want to repeat that in other places, and Mr. Delk suggested that we choose a different architectural style in each instance. So we did a Georgian style for Crestwood. But we'd actually been accumulating the land for the plaza since 1913, which was even before Brookside was on the drawing board. So in some respects it did come first. But the problem was that the land that is now the Country Club Plaza was first a subdivision called Country Club Plaza, and not owned by me. It was owned by a fellow named George Law, who was a competitor in the real estate business. Now, he had stolen the name from me, because well, this is the way it works in real estate. I was called, by 1908, I was calling my subdivisions the Country Club District. And in the case of Mr. Law, he decided that he would utilize that name, which by 1911, when he got started, was a fairly popular name. Now, the only problem was he was going to use it in a piece of land that was, well, for want of a better term, swamp, Brush Creek Valley. And people in Kansas City would not buy a lot in Brush Creek Valley. They knew better. So he advertised all over the country, put ads in newspapers, and sold a lot of lots that way in what he called Country Club Plaza. And so then, beginning in 1913, I took one of my salesmen, George Turlow, and put him on the train. He traced out every individual lot owner that George Law had sold to in cities and towns across the United States. I don't know how many miles of log, but there were in the thousands. Gathering up this land very quietly. Obviously, as any of you who are in the real estate business know, you don't want to advertise what you're doing. So he would simply refer that he was wanted to buy this piece of property. So we assembled it by about 1920 or so. We had all the pieces, which included not only where the shops are, but also east on 47th Street, across Brush Creek on the south side, and to the west. My intention was the edge would be sold to building contractors who would put up apartment buildings. We had one section that was going to be duplexes, very nice upscale duplexes on Ward Parkway going west from the plaza. And so that was the idea with that. And then finally, the problem was that there was still one use of land that was out of sync, out of place. and that was the Lyle Brickyard, which was located over here just south of Rush Creek up on the hill, right on Main Street. It had been there for a couple of decades by that time. And finally, what we had to do is we had to go to court. We sued them. And what we sued them on was that the neighborhood had changed, and it was no longer compatible with the use of that spot for making bricks and belching out, you know, smoke and all that sort of thing. And we won. We won in the Missouri Court of Law, and they ultimately had to move out. That didn't get accomplished, though, until 1922, and at that point we could really go ahead. And so by early 1923, we were able to announce the plan that Mr. Delk had drawn up for us, and we had it in the Kansas City Star. And he was designing our first building, which is the Mill Creek building. So first came Brookside as far as opening, 1919, then Crestwood, 1921, and the first official building on the plaza, 1923. Now I have to tell you though that Chandler Floral was there before the Mill Creek